Do I still clap?
Yeah, you can still clap.
That's like clapping. Audio recording?
Audio is recording.
Hi, I'm Peter from Coffee Parts, and we're looking at Timemore's latest grinders, the C3, C3 Pro, and ESP. Now, in the second half of 2020, Timemore developed a whole new burr, S2C or spike to cut. And what this does is it changes the way the beans hit the burr and then get ground out. Basically it crushes them before it grinds them. This made it a lot more efficient to not only grind, but it gave the particle size distribution a lot more evenness. This burr was released in the flagship Chestnut X and later came into the Chestnut X Lite. It was a 42mm conical burr. Timemore has now taken that S2C or spike to cut technology and brought it into the mainstream C3 grinder, which is an evolution of the C2. So effectively on the C3, you now have the spike to cut and a 38mm conical burr, as well as better dial-in parameters. They've really worked on being able to dial in with half the amount of effort. Ultimately, this resulted in a more consistent grind that's easier to dial in. They're still running the same two colors, white here, but it does come in black. You got the special edition colors blue and red that are limited runs. And they've developed the Pro. The Pro is the same as the C3, but what they've done is they've brought in the foldable handle that was originally out of the Nano and the Chestnut X. The handle makes it a lot easier to travel with, but it also sits a lot nicer on the bench because you don't have that counterweight. They've added a little bit of rubber there, so when the handle does hit the body, it doesn't create any damage to the grinder. It really is a nicely finished grinder. So you got the C3 and the C3 Pro in the white and black, using the same blades and the same dial-in. And then Timemore realized there was a gap in their range. As their range got bigger, they didn't have an espresso focus grinder, and that's where the ESP came in. Now this grinder is a more premium grinder to the C3s, and where the big change is being espresso focused. Although it still does filter, they've done the spike to cut but out of an E and B burr. And when it comes to dialing in, for every one dial in you have here, you've got two here. So you can really maximize that dial in to the smallest of movements. Effectively on this grinder where you might be running espresso, call it 7 to 8, over here you're running at 18 to 24. And it really is easy to dial in. And the last but little feature is they've included a rubber base, which when you do put it down on the counter, it just has that premium feel. It's tiny, but it really does feel nice. Now that we've talked about the specs, let's see these two grinders in action, running 20 grams of coffee on each one and pulling an espresso. The C3 covers a broad range of coffee styles, from espresso all the way to mocha pot. Now with the ESP, it still does that from espresso all the way to mocha pot, but it really is focused on espresso with those extra dial-ins and the blades having a geometry predominantly for espresso. So you'd be buying this grinder for a hand-based espresso grinder when you'd be buying these grinders as an overall grinder, more value for money grinder that really does all applications. So we're going to run 20 grams of coffee out of the C3 Pro. We've dialed it into position 8, basically go all the way to fine and then bring it back 8 notches. I'm just going to load the coffee in at the top here. And then start grinding. And that's 20 grams of coffee ground. Just opening up the grinder now. We're just going to put it here so then we can compare it with the ESP, which is more of an espresso focused grinder. With the ESP, we've dialed it into 18, and there's a bigger range from 18 to 24 that you can dial in for espresso. Just loading in 20 grams of coffee as well. I'm gonna grind out, same thing on this one. And that's 20 grams out of the ESP. And just pulling out the same amount of coffee out of here. You can see out of the ESP, it's a little bit more consistent to grind as it is an espresso focused grinder. The true results or the real results will be once we put these through an espresso machine and just see the extraction. So we're pulling a shot from the coffee out of the C3 Pro, aiming for the 40 grams out because we did 20 in. From a visual perspective, the shot looks good. It's got nice body. You can feel the clarity come through. For a grinder of this price point, it's actually quite surprising. It is a nice espresso, and this is a grinder that's really focused from espresso all the way to filter, so it's not an espresso predominant grinder. So quite impressed by it. Now we'll look at the ESP and what it can do being an espresso focused grinder. It's a little bit easier to dial in for espresso because you don't have too much of a range between notches. So let's see what it can do. Once again, going for the 2:1 ratio, 20 grams in, 40 grams out, but this time with coffee out of the ESP. From a visual perspective, the shot looks good. Actually looks very similar to the C3 Pro shot. We'll see how it tastes in the cup. And just on 40 grams out. It's nice, you can taste the flavor separation a little bit more clarity, but you still got the overall good body. So I think compared to the C3, with the ESP, you're getting a little bit more flavor separation and clarity. Still get that body. The ESP, from a dialing in perspective, the shots we did off camera, was a little bit easier to dial in than the C3 Pro. Overall, both really nice coffees. A little bit more clarity out of the ESP, but not a big difference, and that does come down to personal preference. Some people just want more body. But I like both coffees. I'll be happy with either grinder. The ESP is an espresso focused grinder, does do filter, where in the C3, I guess, is a broader range. Let me know in the comments below, what's your favorite hand grinder? We reviewed a lot of hand grinders on this channel, and even for me, it's hard to pick. Some grinders are better than others in specific areas, price point, design, build, whatever it might be. So I'm curious to know what's your favorite. And like always, if this video has brought you value, hit that thumbs up. If you haven't yet, please subscribe. Thank you and see you in the next video.